Hello everyone, we are here today for the ISCEA 2025 Global Case Competition to present aligning CO2 and greenhouse gas goals across Michelin and key suppliers. I'm Camille and I'm joined by Gian, Catherine, and Carmela. We are Team BowLink. This is our full 12-point agenda covering everything from the core issues to the competitive advantage and use of AI. As we know from the case, the focal company is Michelin. Their success depends on three key suppliers: ExxonMobil for energy, Baycard for materials, and Duke Energy for utility. The core issue is that misaligned targets and slow supplier progress are directly blocking Michelin's publicly stated climate goals. Our objective is to analyze targets, find the gaps, and design a solution. We are proposing a joint SCSCA Cooperation Agreement. This framework will create the shared goals, standardize the data, and accountability needed across the entire network. This supplier network map shows the relationship between Michelin and its key suppliers' greenhouse gas performance. It immediately clarifies why alignment creates a major challenge. First, Duke Energy, which supplies Michelin's electricity, shows comprehensive disclosure. 95% of their emissions are covered by their net zero target. They aim for an 80% cut by 2040. Baycard, the material supplier, is making good progress on its own operations, showing a 15% cut in Scope 1 and 2 since 2019. Their internal target is a 46% reduction by 2030. Crucially, ExxonMobil is the largest Scope 3 linkage for Michelin. They contribute 630 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent in indirect emissions for 2024. This massive footprint from the energy supplier is the primary challenge Michelin must overcome to meet its own decarbonization goals. The network mapping we just covered highlights why supplier alignment on CO2 and greenhouse gas reduction is critical. The majority of a global business's footprint is Scope 3, meaning the indirect emissions from partners like ExxonMobil. Without supplier cooperation, our data is incomplete and inconsistent. They must all agree on boundaries, baselines, and reporting metrics. Alignment provides the transparent, comparable data necessary to set accurate goals and achieve effective global decarbonization.
Good day everyone! Today we'll explore which Michelin internal and external stakeholders are essential to actively involve, not just passively advise when driving practical emission reductions. Let's look at their roles and how targeted engagement strategies can accelerate progress. Let's start with the internal stakeholders. Procurement and supply chain teams play a critical role by integrating GHG targets directly into supplier contracts and performance scoreboards. Incentives should be tied to measurable emission milestones. Sustainability and ESG teams define decarbonization pathways and align standards across suppliers, while operations and manufacturing can lead by example, implementing energy transition projects and sharing real-time performance data. Together, these functions create internal alignment that drives external influence. Externally, Michelin must foster collaboration with suppliers like ExxonMobil, Baycard, and Duke Energy. They should co-develop emission milestones, harmonize Scope 1 to 3 reporting, and commit to transparent data sharing. In parallel, policy and regulatory advisors ensure Michelin stays aligned with evolving carbon regulations, while customers and investors provide market and reputational pressure for verified progress. Transparent communication such as sustainability dashboards or joint reports help reinforce trust and accountability.
In this table, we've assessed each supplier's greenhouse gas targets, showing their base years, milestones, and scope coverage. The results reveal the trade-offs that exist between cost, reliability, and speed. For instance, ExxonMobil's low-carbon fuel and capture tech offer speed but could impact energy costs. Duke Energy's large-scale utility ensures a stable supply, yet its gradual shift to clean power is inherently slow. Similarly, Baycard's sustainability targets depend on slower operational transitions. Ultimately, Michelin must weigh these factors, choosing suppliers whose pace aligns with its goals, without sacrificing affordability or supply stability. By evaluating each supplier's targets, they can align climate ambitions with practical business considerations.
In analyzing Michelin's supply network with ExxonMobil, Baycard, and Duke Energy, we identified 5 critical gaps that must be bridged for full alignment. First is ambition and scope. Not everyone is aiming for the same climate goal. Michelin's targets are science-based and full value chain, while Exxon still exclude product emissions. Second is baselines and timelines. Companies count progress from different years, so a 50% cut for one is unequal for another, making coordination difficult. Third is data quality. We can't manage what we don't measure consistently. Michelin and Baycard have verified data, but Exxon and Duke still have reporting gaps. Fourth is milestones and incentives. Interim goals and performance rewards are aligned, so suppliers don't always feel the same urgency Michelin does. Fifth is capabilities and support. Each supplier faces unique barriers, from policy limits to costly technology shifts that slow collective progress. These gaps are the cracks in the foundation. Recognizing them points the way toward coordinated, science-based solutions. In global supply chains, every company measures emissions differently, so without a common framework, data becomes messy and impossible to compare. That's where global standards and guidelines come in. The GHG protocol provides the foundation, defining Scope 1, 2, and 3, and standardizing how companies calculate and report emissions. It's like giving everyone the same dictionary for carbon accounting. On top of that, the Science Based Targets Initiative helps companies turn those measurements into climate-aligned goals, while CDP creates a shared platform for suppliers to disclose emissions in the same format. ISO 14064 adds verification, ensuring the data is credible, and the EU CSRD makes this consistency mandatory through legal reporting standards. Together, these frameworks form one connected system. Companies measure emissions the same way, verify them to the same standard, and report them in the same language. The result is clear, comparable, and trustworthy data, allowing buyers and suppliers to align targets, collaborate on reductions, and accelerate progress toward net zero.
Let's now turn to a real-world example. Lululemon's Be Planet sustainability efforts were hindered by supplier misalignment. According to Action Speaks Louder, Lululemon publicly committed to cutting its emission. However, almost 99.7% of its total emission fall under Scope 3, which means they come from its global supply chain, not its own operations. As reported by Action Speaks Louder, many of Lululemon's Tier 2 suppliers are actually moving in the wrong direction. Out of 13 suppliers that set targets, 11 either made very limited progress or even increased their emissions. One key reason was weak support for renewable energy transitions. Only 0.3% of Lululemon's operation use 100% renewable electricity, and suppliers received minimal, technical, or financial assistance to make those changes. As a result, environmental impacts like polluted waterways and factory emissions continued despite the company's sustainability promises. This case clearly shows how misaligned suppliers can undermine corporate climate goals, no matter how ambitious those goals may be. From this case, there are 4 main lessons for Michelin. First, align supplier targets with corporate goals. Michelin needs to make sure its key suppliers like ExxonMobil, Bekaert, and Duke Energy have emission reduction targets aligned with Michelin's own Scope 1 to 3 climate goals. When suppliers share the same direction, progress becomes measurable and consistent across the value chain. Second, prioritize transparency and accountability. One of Lululemon's major challenges was weak supply chain data. To avoid this, Michelin should establish robust reporting, third-party assurance, and data sharing systems, ensuring that suppliers provide verified emission and energy mix data. This transparency builds both credibility and trust. Third, ensures strong governance and collaboration. Michelin can benefit from setting up a formal cross-supplier cooperation mechanism, such as the Sustainable Chain Supplier Collaboration Alliance, or SCSCA. This structure would help align incentives, track progress, and enforce accountability, reducing the risk of greenwashing and ensuring that sustainability targets translate into real action. Lastly, promote supplier innovation and transition. For instance, supporting Bekaert in low-carbon steelmaking or partnering with Duke Energy on renewable projects. By aligning suppliers' goals, promoting transparency, and strengthening governance, Michelin can turn its sustainability commitments into measurable system-wide impact.
For Michelin, aligning suppliers on GHG reduction started as a climate goal, but it's become a real business advantage. When Michelin began tracking carbon across its supply chain, it discovered something bigger. Every ton of CO2 often represented wasted energy, material, or money. By helping suppliers cut emissions, Michelin also cut costs, and even secured a $2.5 billion sustainability-linked credit with lower rates tied to meeting its climate targets. Working with suppliers to set science-based targets can make the supply chain more resilient, less exposed to fuel price spikes and new carbon taxes. At the same time, transparency through the CDP and GHG protocol can strengthen Michelin's reputation as a sustainability leader. Because it already gathers verified supplier data, Michelin is ahead of the new regulations like the EU CSRD, turning compliance into an advantage rather than a burden. And as suppliers innovate from bio-based rubber to green steel, Michelin gains new materials, new partnerships, and new ways to grow. In short, by aligning suppliers on GHG, Michelin isn't just reducing emission, it's building a smarter, stronger, and more future-ready business. Here's our GHG alignment roadmap from 2025 to 2030. In the first 3 months, Michelin and its supplier align on a common 2020 base year and finalize scope definitions. By months 3 to 6, they deploy a shared data dashboard and set a quarterly reporting cadence. Within the first year, the SCSCA Agreement is piloted with ExxonMobil, Baker and Duke Energy. In year 2, GHG KPIs are built into procurement contracts and supplier scorecards. By years 3 and 4, the group establishes a joint green investment fund to scale renewable and efficiency projects. And by year 5, the goal is verified absolute scope 1, 2, and 3 reductions of at least 50% from the 2020 baseline. Continuous monitoring is what keeps this entire plan moving. It turns goals into real progress by tracking supplier emissions, spotting risk early, and creating a feedback loop for accountability. Michelin uses tools like digital dashboards, CDP reporting, and supplier scorecards, all guided by the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. Common metrics like total CO2, emissions per product, and progress versus targets show whether suppliers are on track. This continuous monitoring ensures transparency, keeps suppliers accountable, and makes climate action a measurable and lasting part of Michelin's strategy.
We now address the challenges of harmonizing targets, boundaries, and data quality. The table highlights that suppliers use differing base years, such as Michelin's 2010 versus Duke Energy's 2005, making progress comparison difficult. There are also major scope boundary gaps. ExxonMobil and Duke Energy focus mainly on scope 1 and 2, but Michelin needs them to track scope 3, plus data quality and verification vary, reducing confidence in reported figures. Our proposed SCSCA Cooperation Agreement can resolve this by setting standardized boundaries and metrics, creating uniform data templates, and fostering shared accountability and joint governance. This ensures all parties align their targets and improve overall data consistency.
When procurement should link emissions to decisions. So procurement should link emissions performance to sourcing decisions, but only in a phased and responsible way. In phase 1, from now to 2024, the priority is simply collecting data, establishing baselines, and aligning scope 3 expectations. Phase 2, from 2025 to 2030, gradually integrates CO2 metrics into RFPs and contract renewals. And by phase 3, after 2030, companies can reward low-carbon suppliers and fully embed climate performance into scorecards and renewals. Across all phases, we need guardrails, a phased approach so suppliers have time to adapt, support for SMEs, verified data to ensure integrity, and protections to avoid supply disruptions or unfair penalties. Where AI adds value. So AI can support this transition by helping teams process complex sustainability data more efficiently. First, AI accelerates research. It can rapidly scan sustainability reports, CDP disclosures, SBTI data, and academic sources to map supplier baselines and targets. Second, AI can synthesize inconsistent supplier data. Natural language tools can standardize differences in units, formats, and base years, helping identify gaps and correlations. Third, AI strengthens scenario planning by modeling different collaboration strategies, such as renewable energy adoption or logistics optimization, to estimate their impact on GHG reductions. Risk of AI application. So despite the benefits, AI also introduces risk. One major risk is data reliability. If supplier data is incomplete or biased, AI will amplify those issues. Another challenge is the black box nature of AI models. When algorithms are not transparent, teams may misinterpret results or overlook assumptions. And lastly, there's a risk of over-reliance. If teams depend too heavily on AI without domain expertise, they make decisions without proper validation. For mitigation strategies, to manage these risks, organizations should apply human-in-the-loop validation, meaning AI output should always be checked by experts and verified with suppliers. Using open source or auditable models increases transparency. A strong data governance framework ensures that all emissions data follows consistent entry and verification standards. And finally, ethical AI guidelines help define what types of decisions AI can support, especially in areas like environmental reporting. Overall, harmonizing GHG targets requires consistent standards and transparency across suppliers. The SCSCA agreement provides that structure, while AI can accelerate research, synthesis, and scenario planning if applied responsibly. By combining strong governance with technological support, companies can drive meaningful decarbonization across global supply chains.
On behalf of Team BowLink, we thank you for your time and your attention.